All we hear about is the law of attraction. Okay, but there's a stair step here. There's action, which then drives the attraction. And then the compensation is actually the receiving aspect.
People will tell you it gradually gets better, but let me tell you, it's like little graduals. And I know that because that's how I felt. So if you need someone to just listen and not offer advice, I'll be that person for you.
One of the keys to really understanding how to be more authentically yourself is to learn how to let go. Because the more empathy we have for ourselves, and the more empathy we can, in return, have for others.
Are people empaths because they feel people's feelings even though they've never felt it themselves? Just because I can feel your feelings doesn't mean I know what you're feeling. It just means I'm in tune with your energy. Hi, I'm Amber Mikesell, author of Silence Your Inner Critic, and I am so excited to share that the book Silence Your Inner Critic is now available for pre-order. You can pop on over to silenceyourinnercritic.com and place your pre-order there. And while on silenceyourinnercritic.com, you can find tons of fun free resources available for you to explore. So here we are, new year, 2025, exciting stuff.
Happy New Year, my love.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everyone who's listening as well. We wrapped up last year talking about how awesome it is to head into a new year just with purpose, right? And one of the ways to head into a new year with purpose, of course, we have the standard, you could set New Year's resolutions. But if that's not your thing, which it really kind of isn't our thing, because every day you wake up, you have an opportunity to resolve to do something, right? So for me to do that just one time a year doesn't really fit. I want to do that every day when I wake up, because every day is an opportunity for me to kind of set the new slate and move forward. But at the start of a new year, one thing that's really, really beneficial for me is looking forward in those new success metrics that I have for myself is how am I going to really go inward and clear out some of the stuff that maybe I don't want to carry into that new year, right? I did some of that clearing out last year. But there might still be some things, because we all know when we clean out the closet, sometimes we hold on to some things that we really probably shouldn't have. So how do we do that? How do we go into this year with sympathy, empathy, and compassion? And I think one of the first things we should do is kind of define why is it important to have sympathy, empathy, and compassion? Like, why are we moving through those things? And why did we talk about those as superhero skills, right? Those are some of your superpowers.
Yeah.
And silence your inner critic.
What kind of sparked this idea to kind of talk about this today was really just us looking ahead and saying, okay, hey, there's so many, in past podcasts, we said, it's not new me, it's
new year, new me.
It's like, ooh, well, it's reinventing yourself every year kind of gets old. So it's like, well, what about just new me, or new year, just me? Like, be more authentic in myself and understand that. And that's fantastic. But one of the keys to really understanding how to be more authentically yourself is to, as you said, learn how to let go. How many times do we go into the new year thinking about how we desire to experience ourselves in this new year, and then forget to maybe forgive ourselves for all the things that we haven't either accomplished or embodied or experienced. I mean, life gets tough. Things kind of get in the way. And maybe we said at the beginning of the year, we were like, oh gosh, we want to travel, once a quarter. And then this year, maybe a lot of things happened that it didn't happen. And then we're coming into next year and we're kind of down on ourselves. Like, hey, X, Y, and Z goals didn't happen because of these different things. And it's easy to kind of get bogged down by that. And so one of the things that's really helped me as I become more authentically myself is to forgive myself. And as we've talked about, have empathy for myself and for each one of us, because the more empathy we have for ourselves, then the more empathy we can in return have for others. We can build that capacity up. And so that's why I think it's kind of important, because a lot of people use sympathy, empathy, compassion almost interchangeably. Someone like myself, I definitely have done that before, until we really did a deep dive in understanding the differentiation and why.
It can get confusing. It's like, oh, I have a lot of sympathy for you. But what you really mean is you have a lot of empathy because you've been there. You know what it's like to feel what someone else is feeling. So you're actually empathizing, right? And we just had this conversation before we started this conversation. Like, you hear people called empaths, right? Like, are people empaths because they feel people's feelings even though they've never felt it themselves? Well, are they empaths or are they sympaths, right?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I get the sense, but I haven't actually felt your feelings. So it kind of throws me off a little bit, because just because I can feel your feelings doesn't mean I know what you're feeling, right? It just means I'm in tune with your energy
Yeah.
and I can resonate with that energy, but it doesn't mean I know what you're going through. I haven't navigated what you're navigating. For example, if you just lost your best friend, they've passed on, and I've never lost my best friend. I can feel your sadness, right? As an empath, maybe I feel that energy, but I don't know what you're going through because I haven't had that experience. So, but I can sympathize with you because, man, I know that that must really hurt. And I wouldn't want to know what that feels like if I wouldn't have to know what that feels like, right? So that can throw you off a little, right? Is it sympathy, empathy? What is it? But when we look at the definitions for what they are, that's exactly what it is. Like, I can have sympathy for you and know that that must really suck. And I would not desire to be in that experience, but I want to be here and hold space for you and love you through this, whatever you need from me, right? That's sympathy. Empathy is, I've been there. Like, I have had my own version of this experience. And while they're not exactly the same, man, I know that every day is really challenging for like the first month of it. And then people will tell you it gradually gets better, but let me tell you, it's like little graduals. It's not like it just gets better, it just little incremental gets better. And I know that because that's how I felt. So if you need someone to just listen and not offer advice, I'll be that person for you. That's empathy. Now, compassion means that you have sympathy or empathy, and now you're moved to do something about it. Like, you're going to get involved somehow and make that feeling shift, or make whatever's happening shift in some way. So those feelings have moved you to action.
Yeah, much like in the way that you just said, just simply listening or holding space for someone, whether you have sympathy or empathy, whether you experienced it or didn't, that's a great compassionate action to assist that person who's clearly going through something. And whether you have had the direct experience or not, to me, doesn't define the way that one can compassionately respond in a situation. It could, someone who's never gone through it can still be extremely compassionate in their action, feel very moved to support and help and be there and be an incredible resource to that individual who really needs it. It's yeah, I don't think I don't feel like there's a limitation personally,
Yeah, I agree.
at least not in every case.
Yeah.
Maybe in certain ones there might, I can understand where there could be, but I don't feel like it's a blanket statement, I guess is where I'm going with that.
Whatever moves you to compassion is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And getting back to your point about being able then to turn that inward, right? Because now that we know, then how do we do that for ourselves heading into the year? so that we can move through any of the stuff that maybe we did carry in and we don't feel so weighed down, so that we can be that heart centered, present, able to pivot person that we were talking about in the last podcast, right? Because when you feel weighed down and you're kicking your own backside, it's really hard to turn and pivot and be agile.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the good news is that you won't have to do all 3 because, you're gonna be empathetic with everything that you've experienced, so you won't necessarily be just sympathetic
Yeah.
because you have experienced everything that you've experienced.
Unless you've created distance between yourself and what happened.
Elaborate more. I'm interested in this.
I know that I've done this and I have seen others who have done it where we create so much distance between ourselves and the memory that we no longer feel it anymore. It hits so deep and so hard that we just don't even want to acknowledge that it happened to us. Almost that numb feeling, you know? And it creates such a distinct difference. It's like, I can't empathize with that because there's no connection to it. It's almost like it's severed. So I can have sympathy, but that's my first step to even reconnecting that this really did happen to me.
Wow.
And it's almost a psychological thing of protection, right? When you've had such a life altering or life changing moment, that the only way you can move forward is to suppress it. Then to be able to access it again, sympathy may be required. Have sympathy for yourself for having navigated something like that. Sexual assault can be one of those things, right? The moment you begin to, and that's where I'm speaking from, the moment you begin to understand and have sympathy for yourself for having gone through that like you would someone else, then it can help bridge that gap to empathy.
Mm.
And you can begin to feel what you went through in small bits. That can move you then into compassion. Because for something like that, you can blame yourself. Like somehow, even though you were the victim, you somehow start to blame yourself. Like somehow you did this to yourself. So these things can start to break it down for you, where you can be like, look, it might not make sense that I'm blaming myself. I know in my brain this doesn't compute, but my emotions aren't logical. My emotions are my emotions. So now that I've reached an empathetic space, I can compassionately hold the fact that that's not logical. And I can begin to forgive myself for whatever I'm holding over myself. Whether it's, well, I shouldn't have been there at that time, or I should have done something different, I can start to just let that go. And then I can truly let it go and move through it, as we talk about, right? Move through it, not suppress it, go around it, think that I can somehow get over it. No, I have to go through it so that I can no longer carry it. And that's what I think the power is and what you're talking about.
Yeah, thank you for expressing that. I didn't view it from that perspective, and so I really appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense, and wasn't seeking to make light.
No, I
But
know.
it,
Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
naturally, it's like hey, I've only experienced what I've experienced, and so I appreciate you expanding my awareness in the sense of just understanding. Should something like that occur for me, or maybe I have my own lack of awareness in that sense, and so that's a good opportunity in this reflection time to to seek to understand. I feel like a lot of people might really resonate with what you just said. I know I did, even though I'm not sure if I've even had that, uh, an experience where I feel removed like that. So I think that is very beneficial, and the end result, like the end, having compassion like that, It's a huge aspect of healing. And so it's, like you said, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like when we talk about action, attraction, and compensation, right? There's that three aspects. All we hear about is the law of attraction. And it's like, oh, this is
Bring it to me.
bring it to me, bring it to me, bring it to me. But it's like, okay, but there's a stair step here. There's action, which is the actual doing, which then drives the attraction, and then the compensation is actually the receiving aspect, because you can attract all you want, but if you're not willing to receive it, it's not happening.
Yeah.
And especially if we're sort of so caught up in like, oh, it needs to only be this one way, and it's like 50 other ways it's happening to us, and we're just pushing everything away. It's like, yeah, no, it's not going to happen. And so this idea, this flow of sympathy, empathy, and compassion is really interesting in that kind of way, where it's just kind of moving you through, so that when you do get to that point where you're moved even within yourself, to take action towards your own, to heal, that's really amazing, because it's hard enough to go through the sympathy part, and it's even more difficult to go through the empathy part, especially when you're talking about yourself in the way that you just presented. And so that last step of getting into compassion, how to take compassionate action towards oneself, when you can really get clarity and awareness and authentically move in that direction, one, big round of personal applause. That's amazing. And two, um, it's amazing the capacity that you can have for someone else. And I know, as someone who's watches you and witnesses you every day, like as being my partner in life and in business and living with you, it's like, I've seen your capacity for love, and it's amazing to me, even in this moment, 10 years later, to still learn, in that way, the way that you just described, just to see it even from a grander perspective of that, beautiful, uh, step, in which you take between sympathy, empathy, and compassionate, and then you have the greater capacity then to give that to others because you've first given it to yourself.
It can be incredibly powerful and humbling and all the things in between. And I know you said not to make light of it, but I think it's important sometimes to make light of it, or it will feel so heavy it can crush you,
Mm.
which is why we call it a superpower in the book, right? And I do make light of it a little bit in the book, not in a making fun of it way, but in a way of when we go into these inner realms within us, it is an epic quest. It really is. And if I'm going on an epic inward quest, I'm going to be the superhero in my own inward journey. And every one of these skills are my superpowers. And I'm uncovering these dormant superpowers. And when I can utilize them in my own inner realm, then they are powerful as all get out when I can use them in the world around me. And that just ignites the superpowers in others, right? They're like, oh, I've got the superpower too. And when we can make light of it, and I mean like actual light, right? The energy, the light of it in that way, then it becomes more fun and it doesn't feel so heavy and like it's going to crush my soul diving into it this way. It's like, yeah, it sucked. What happened in my life sucked. And there's no way around that. But it also isn't happening to me now. But the longer I carry around the energy of it, the more it keeps happening to me now. And the only way to stop that is to ignite those superpowers that I know I have, go in and get rid of it.
Mm.
Put it back in the past where it belongs so that it's not still happening to me now. Clear up the trail. Be like Doctor Strange in this one, right? Cut that energetic trail send it back to the past. Like, cut the Dormammu the train, right? I don't want to keep cycling and cycling in an endless loop, infinite loop.
You have a
No.
bargain.
No more Dormammu. We're done. We're going to cut it and we're going to be done. And that's exactly what this gives you the power to do, right? Cut the infinite loop that these memories and these energies hold on you. And you can envision yourself being your own version of Doctor Strange if you want, going in and just cutting those infinite loops with sympathy, empathy, compassion. However, if you already have empathy, then do it with compassion and then help others do the same.
I really like that visual of bringing light to it, because it kind of reminds me of like when we're kids and the lights are off in the room and we think, oh my gosh, there's monsters, it's scary, it's everything, and then the moment the light flips on, it's like, oh yeah, no, it's everything's fine. And so it's just kind of that, and it's not to, I'm using this like it's not to discount anything that we have experienced that would feel very dark and heavy. But sometimes just kind of flipping on that light that you're saying is a way out. It's the way through that you're talking about. And to remind us, like, hey, it's not happening right now. And so, how can I better position myself now in the future by moving through something, versus feeling like the light is always off, even though I'm attempting to turn it on.
Yes.
And so it just kind of clears that path. And so I that was like just a good visual. Um, and I'm sure there are situations in people's lives that, that's a very reductive analogy. And so, I do apologize for that, but this is mainly for kind of situations where we tend to, um, hold ourselves back when it's things we could actually move through relatively quickly, that aren't as intense, but sometimes it feels that way. And so it's, how do we pull ourselves out of situations when, I've been this, where I'm like, I'm actually in my own way,
Mhm.
and I'm the one who's perpetuating it in that sense. And it could be something small or trivial, but over time, it's kind of like if you hold a glass of water, it doesn't feel like a big deal for like a minute. It's like, okay, I can do that. If you hold it for 30 minutes, it's like, and you hold it for 2 hours and you might feel like your arm's going to fall off. It's like, well, the weight of the water never shifted, right? But how long you hold it, that's what kind of starts to bring you down.
Yes.
And so that's kind of where this analogy could kind of help, when moving through things. Obviously, when they are very intense, um, maybe this could be a beacon in that sense, but there's going to be a lot more to that.
But I would offer, no matter what anyone is moving through, if you don't shed light on it, it is really hard to see your way through it or out of it.
Yeah,
And that goes for anything, small, large, seemingly overwhelming. If we're so in the darkness of it and we don't turn on the light, or we're unwilling to shed the light on it or harness the superpowers that we hold, then we're leaving ourselves in the darkness. And maybe we need to for a little while. I've had days where being in my room, the darkness of my room under the covers, is exactly what I need for the moment. But I'm also accepting in that moment that my goal isn't to move through something. It is to be where I'm at for the moment until I'm ready to take the steps to move through it. But as we're heading into this new year, if we're headed toward those success metrics and defining what success is and looking ahead, then sitting in our beds with our covers pulled up over us and the comfort of darkness may not be what's going to get us to where we desire to go, which is where this trifold superpower can really come in and shed that light that you're talking about. even in some of the darkest uh, things that could be going on.
Oh, it makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of individuals and myself included when I wanted to get out, I was ready to get out of it. I just didn't know how. And so this kind of this trifold, however you, um, I don't know what we call it, or the superpowers, or um, you mentioned the book earlier, and
Yeah.
so it might be good for those who are just listening for the first time to maybe share the book, because there's a lot of books out there.
There are a lot of books out there. So it's called Silence Your Inner Critic. And it is just, I love personal development books. I consume them like they're candy. And after consuming a great number of them, I really got to a point where it was okay, I want to take an adventure in a personal development book, one where I get to be the superhero of my own story. And that's when you and I really started bantering around. Well, why don't we take this inner critic that really seems to be the entry point for so many breakdowns in our life? It fuels that negative brain bias. It really goes in and messes not only with our brain, but with our mind, that mind chatter constantly. So let's make him, her, it, the supervillain of this story, of this narrative story. And in true comic book form, we're going to have our own superhero. And that's our inner champion, the part of us that can rise up and tell that inner critic, not in my inner realm, but that inner champion needs the tools. So we need our own superhero arsenal. We need our own super suit. We need everything that a superhero needs. But first, the superhero needs to remember that you're a hero.
Mm.
So we go on this journey of discovering our own authentic hero, of uncovering our superpowers, getting our supersuit, developing our arsenal, and then facing off with our inner critic because we have everything that we need. And chances are in that first face off, as with most superheroes, it's not like, oh, one battle and we're done. No, that's not how it works. Plus, most of the time, the superhero isn't out to destroy the supervillain. They're just out to contain the supervillain. And that interaction causes the superhero to grow stronger with every interaction. And so that's the dance that you begin to play. You learn from your inner critic, but you contain it. You don't let it run your inner realm anymore. It's not going crazy in there. You take it and you put it in its own little layer where it can live happily, but it's not out running rampant in your inner metropolis. So you acquire all these tools and skills, and I'm your gal in a chair the whole time you get to do it. So it's fun and it's interactive and it's a narrative story walking you through everything you need.
I love it. It's amazing, and thank you for walking through. Just it's important to kind of share context of where this is all coming from, and so this you know triad or trifold or Try wizard, I don't know. Try
All
wizard
those
champion,
things.
all those things. It's these are such great tools that I know have really helped me in a lot of ways, especially when attempting to learn how to be my authentic self. It's looking back and seeing versions of myself and just being like, oh man, I can't even believe like how could I got the ick on myself.
I
It's
gave
like
myself
healthy
the ick.
ick. Yeah. And I was like, man, I can't believe it, that that's how I used to act, or that's what I did, or that's what I believed, or that's what I, thought was truth, or, it's just, it's tough. I mean, and you don't know until you know. And that's the hardest part. But having empathy for yourself in those situations and saying, it doesn't excuse any behaviors during those times, and it definitely don't condone them or whatever. This is a relative term. I'm talking about myself here. But I am not that person anymore. I forgive myself for those actions and how I used to be. And I give myself runway for the future, knowing that every now moment is the incredible empowerment of choice. So anytime I don't like some version of me, or I'm not in alignment with some version of me, I can forgive myself and move forward and choose something different. And it's not up to anyone else. It's up to me. And that is one of the most empowering opportunities that all of us have in every now moment to say, no, whatever's going on in my life, I'm the one constant and I have the opportunity to shift it. That's that's what makes me feel like a superhero.
That's epic.
Yeah.
And I think that's an amazing place for us to wrap up so you all can begin your own epic quest as you are heading into 2025. What might you have in there still that you're carrying with you that sympathy, empathy, and compassion could help you navigate through? What superhero skills could you acquire through using those three to get in there and really shed light? And if you're looking for a resource that can help you, we have the book, Silence Your Inner Critic. It is now available for you to pre order. You can go to silenceyourinnercritic.com and pre order there. Or you can pre order anywhere that books are sold, like Barnes and Noble. And once you do us a favor and either send us a screenshot of your order or send us your order number. And the moment you do, we'll make certain that you start receiving amazing gifts from me, your gal in the chair, to get you started on your own epic quest long before you get your copy of the book. And then once you get your copy of the book, we will continue our tag team duo with your superhero persona. Until next time, continue checking out what we have available right here on the Heart Leader Podcast.